The Supreme Court, being the highest court in the land, pronounced itself on this issue of presumption of marriages. So now your marriage does not fall under the 5 categories we've talked about earlier, and you've been cohabiting with your partner for a long time. This issue of people living together for a long time does not necessarily mean that you are in a marriage.
So then maybe Ashley, you can tell us then, what is a presumed marriage?
So from this case analysis we just discussed, the Supreme Court declared itself on what should be a presumed marriage. Hi, my name is Ashley Mukami, a Senior Associate Advocate at Customary and Company Advocates.
And I'm Ingrid Konya, an Associate at Customary and Company Advocates.
Customary and Company Advocates is a firm based in Nairobi. We specialize in the alternative dispute resolution, corporate and commercial law, real estate law, and personal law.
We've been in existence for over 9 years and are currently based at Sandbox, which is along Chania Avenue in Kilimani. On today's episode, we'll discuss on marriage and presumption of marriage. Recently, there's been a Supreme Court judgment that was delivered in petition number 9 of 2021. And maybe, Ashley, you can just give us a brief overview of the facts.
So the petition was rather interesting because it pronounced itself on presumption of marriage and how people can distribute their properties during a presumed marriage. That means that you have cohabited for some time and your marriage is not recognized under the Marriage Act of Kenya 2014. So let's start by just discussing what types of valid marriages are there in Kenya, and then we can proceed to the petition ruling. So we have 5 types of marriages in Kenya that are recognized by the government of Kenya and are registered by the government of Kenya. This is the Christian marriages, the civil marriages. We have
Islamic marriages,
yes,
Hindu marriages.
And the last one is the customary marriages, where you pay dowry and rituals and you can go and get registered by the Registrar of Marriages.
So now that we know the 5 types of marriage, maybe you can let us know what are the elements of a valid marriage.
So basically, you have to be above the age of 18 years. You have to consent to the marriage. No one can force you to get married. Number 3, you have to have capacity to get married, meaning if you are currently married, you cannot get into another marriage. You either have to divorce the particular partner you were in marriage with, or if the partner is deceased, you can get married if the partner is deceased. So basically, these are the 3 types of
the elements of a valid marriage.
So
I know there are many couples who probably have lived together for such a long time, but they just haven't probably formalized or celebrated these marriages. And I think recently we had a petition in court that was recently determined by the Supreme Court. So maybe you can just tell us what the case was about and what the facts were.
So the Supreme Court, being the highest court in the land, pronounced itself on this issue of presumption of marriages. So now your marriage does not fall under the 5 categories we've talked about earlier, and you've been cohabiting with your partner for a long time. So the brief facts of the case were that a man and wife met in the 1980s, and they decided, you know what, let's live together. And then sometime in 1991, they decided to buy property together, and they invested in that property. They built plots, they even opened a bar and a restaurant, and even the plots they were letting out.
Right.
And it was earning income. So they lived together for some time. They never did the actual marriage ceremonies or even dowry ceremonies.
Without church wedding, customary, civil, right?
Just living like man and wife,
right?
But they hadn't done any ceremonies until sometime in 2011, when the lady evicted the man from her property, because when they bought this property, the property was in the name of the wife, or rather the lady,
right?
So the lady evicted the man from the property, and then the man decided, you know what, we have been married, let's go to court. So they went to the High Court. So when they went to the High Court, the High Court listened to both parties. The man claimed that they are married and they're living together for almost 20 years at the time in 2011.
20 years, wow.
Yeah. And they have invested in property together. So this property should be termed as matrimonial property because they've bought and invested in the property together as man and wife, terming it as matrimonial property. But the lady said, no, I'm not married to you. And as a matter of fact, I was already married and the name of my husband appears in my ID.
Okay.
So when the court had this, the court was of the view, the High Court rather, was of the view that there was no marriage, therefore the property cannot be termed as matrimonial property, and therefore we cannot divide this property under matrimonial property. We'll have to divide it in other areas of law.
Right.
So the man felt aggrieved and went to and filed the case in the Court of Appeal, claiming that the High Court did not understand. So when we went to the Court of Appeal said yes, there's a presumed marriage. They didn't take into account this issue of the lady being previously married, but they said they had lived together for some time, and people knew them as man and wife. So there is a presumed marriage. And with that presumed marriage, meaning the property can be divided as matrimonial property in line with the Constitution of Kenya, where you will talk about it, I'm sure. And so they divided this property 50-50. So the lady again felt aggrieved and said, no, I was not married to this man. So she proceeded to go to the Supreme Court, stating that this issue of presumed marriages is in the interest of the public. So the Supreme Court accepted. And when they accepted, they discussed and said, you know what? This issue of people living together for a long time does not necessarily mean that you are in a marriage.
So then maybe Ashley, you can tell us then what is a presumed marriage?
So from this case analysis we just discussed, the Supreme Court declared itself on what should be a presumed marriage. So the first one is you have cohabited for a long time. We didn't give out the years of cohabiting, but you must have cohabited for some time.
Right.
And then the second one is you have capacity to enter into the relationship and into the marriage, meaning you have to be above the age of 18 years. And number two, you have not been married before, or you're not currently married. So this rules out the mpango wa kandos, because the other partner does not have capacity to enter into the marriage. Right. And the third one is everyone around you and the outside world knows that you guys are living as man and wife. And then the fourth one
sorry?
Do I
need to give consent in such a type? Okay,
yes,
right.
The fourth one is just consent. You have to consent to living together and being in a marriage type of situation.
So then again, this rules out, for lack of a better word, mpango wa kandos.
Yes.